Why was one successful and why was another one not successful? And I stumbled upon the Money Coaching Institute, and I'm like, money coaching. It comes down to, I think, a person's psychology, a person's relationship with money. And I'll hold the book up. Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy. I wrote this book because I started diving into people's relationships with money. Hello and welcome to the Happy Money Podcast. My name is Gino Barbaro, one of the co-founders of Barbaro 360, and I'm joined by my co-host, my son, Michael Barbaro. Michael, how are we doing today?
Doing well, Pops. How we doing?
Good. What are we talking about?
I thought it'd be a good idea to start with this verse from the Gospel of St. Luke, which is, take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one does not consist of possessions.
So what do you take away from that?
So I came up with this kind of analogy that's somewhat similar, and it's the idea of, let's say we were on a desert island, and the only thing we had around us was a duffel bag full of $1 million in cash, and one other person who had food and water. Now, let's say he had a gallon of water and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like, that's probably worth what? Like, I mean, in America, that's still probably like $8 right now, right? But to us, in that situation, that's worth everything to us if we have nothing around us.
So my logical mind would be like, how could I be on a stranded island with $1 million in a duffel
Yeah,
bag
I know,
of
right?
cash? And where do you get the peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Exactly.
But I love the analogy because it's so true. What is money worth in that scenario? What is your life worth? What is the water worth? Basically, you buy a bottle of water for $2. But in that scenario, you'd probably pay $1 million for that.
Probably would, yeah. Because it's all about survival and it's all about our ability to live rather than what money actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you want to kind of get started on kind of the history of money, how that came to be?
Before I do that, to you, when you hear the word money, what does it conjure? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's a way to be able to live my life and to have more choices than I would had I not had money. Yeah.
To me, it's a medium of exchange. I'm going to keep it
Fair
simple.
enough.
I'm going to go over like a 45-second overview of the history of money. And, you know, I'm going to put it up there. I want people to see this book, The History of Money by Jack Weatherford. I think it's important for everyone to understand really what money is, because it's sort of like the last taboo. Nobody really likes to talk about it. There's so much emotion. There's so much miscommunication. There's so much confusion about the topic. And in the book, Weatherford, Jack talks about the history of money. So if we go back to 600 or 700 BC, the Lydians were really the first group of people who created standardized government-backed coins. Before then, it was really bartering.
Yeah.
They had metals, but it was really not uniform. The Lydians were genius enough to say, here's a standard weight. This is what this coin is worth. It's backed by the government. And it was really easy for commerce to happen. Once the Lydians disappeared, the Greeks took that over. Then from the Greeks, the Romans took it over. And you see what the Romans did with money. Really, it was just the machine.
Yeah.
They created a whole empire based on money. It was so much easier for commerce to happen with standardized money. Now, if we go into today, I want to go into like two periods of what's going on in our current marketplace or current economy. If we go back into the 1930s, and you see that FDR actually nationalized the government by having all American citizens repatriate their gold. They have to give their gold back into the government. When people were coming to this country, with very few exceptions, they wanted to actually confiscate everybody's gold. They wanted to take it out of circulation because they wanted to control the price.
They wanted to control, yes, exactly.
They wanted, so that they ended up doing that. And up until like the late 60s, Americans were not allowed to own gold and silver. Now, this date, 1971, Nixon, everyone should write this down because this is when money changed forever. Money before then was backed by gold. Buyer will, shall pay bearer in demand of gold. Like it's backed by gold.
Yeah.
Michael. That was important because if you had $1 of gold, you can only print $1 of money.
Exactly.
Well, in 1971, Nixon's like, I got problems. I need money. I've got the war going on in Vietnam.
Yeah. We got to take it
off the gold standard.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, the government and the money of the United States became known as what we call a fiat currency. Not the car fiat, but the currency fiat, whereas they continue to print money and it's only backed by the faith of the U.S. government. Now, the government can print more money and the government can tax. That's what they do. And it's important because I want people to understand with what's going on right now, there is inflation. People don't know really what inflation is. Inflation is just an increase in the supply of money. Back then, you had gold, You mine more gold, you're able to make more money, but it was backed by something. Now it's not backed by anything other than the faith of the US government. So inflation is an increase in the supply of money. What ends up happening is prices typically tend to increase from that inflation. And what's really important now, inflation is an insidious tax on the middle class, typically because the middle class doesn't own assets. So what happens is the wealthy own assets. Inflation goes up, prices go up, money gets devalued, assets go up. So we're all out there trying to work hard for money. And the harder we work for money, what the wealthy are doing is they're just taking that money and putting it into assets. They don't want to hold money because they know over the long term, the currency gets devalued. Back in the 1970s, it was like 20 cents for a cup of coffee. What's a cup of coffee today? $3, $4? You're seeing how the money has been devalued over time. And that's really important for people to understand. So I think what everyone should do is at least learn the history of money and how money has been devalued over time. And it's really just a fiat currency nowadays.
Yeah. So two things. The first thing is money's been around forever. Like you said, the Romans been doing it, the Greeks have been doing it. But one of the things that makes money work is that it's backed by the government. And so what happens is I actually pulled up a $100 bill on my computer. I'm going to get it on the screen right now. But all you need to do for the history of money as well is just take a look at what the bill actually says. It says Federal Reserve Note. And this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. And so that's basically the government has the authority to say this has authority in our country. So if you take the $100 and you bring it to the UK, it's not going to work because their government doesn't recognize the authority behind it. And so, but again, it used to be backed by gold. It's not, but it still does have authority in the sense of this can be used to pay off your debts. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Yeah. It does.
And so gold, I think, is interesting because gold is one of those very specific investments that has always fought against inflation well. Like I remember someone made a great example of 20, 30 years ago, an ounce of gold could buy you a nice suit. And now gold is $3,300 an ounce. And you can buy a pretty nice suit for $3,300.
Is that what it is right now?
That's what it is.
Because I remember back in the 1970s, it was $30 an ounce. And it's really a hedge against inflation.
That's what it is, yeah.
When people say it's a flight to quality, right? It's a metal. There's really no other use for gold. Now, silver has a lot to do with
the electronics. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So that's interesting that silver is in the low 30s and gold is 100x to that.
Yes.
So if it was me and I'm looking at an investor, I'd like to invest in silver because there's some real use to silver.
Use to silver. But the interesting thing about gold and silver too, of course, is that it's universally acceptable.
Yes.
Like you can take an ounce of gold anywhere in the world and they're going to give you however much it's worth.
Yes.
I guess depending on
and
what
it's
country you're in.
Remember the Italians? Remember we go to Italy and so many Italians, it's cultural to them.
Yes, exactly.
And that's how it was back then. They didn't have money, but they had gold. You can melt it down and you can trade with it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's important. Remember when we go to Italy and we go to the marketplace, and the marketplace is very interesting. It's changed over the last generation or two. When I was a little boy going with you, I would see people going there, the old ladies, they would get money, but they would also barter. And that's how it's changed now. They would get their potatoes, they'd sell the potatoes, they'd go to the shoe guy and say, I need a pair of shoes. Can I have some potatoes? And a pair of shoes. So they would actually barter. So I think money over the last 50, 60, 70 years has become a lot more prevalent in a lot of those societies where it wasn't before. The barter system, especially in these smaller towns. And then when you take credit into consideration, like we were just talking before we hit record, all of a sudden credit card and the availability of credit to the middle class right after World War II here changed the landscape for everything, Michael. Because then all of a sudden credit was reserved just for the wealthy. No one was going to give you a loan unless you had something to back it up.
Exactly.
But then they realized, wow, we can open up an entirely new revenue stream by loaning money to middle class for them to be able to use it to buy consumables, TVs, cars, all of a sudden boats, all of a sudden things started to change back in the 50s. And that's what the credit exploded. Now, in the short term, that brings a lot of prosperity, brings a lot of growth.
In the short term, yeah.
But in the long term, what happens?
You remember that we did a podcast a few months ago now, and we talked about the whole, you can finance your Five Guys burger, right? I think I mentioned this to you a little while ago. What happened is people allowed that. And they allowed people to finance their burgers and their burritos, and now the company is losing hundreds of millions of dollars because they're not just not paying back their burritos in installment payments. And so it's the craziest thing ever because, like you said, they're giving credit to people who are financing their food now. But it's like, if you're financing your food, what makes you think they can pay it back, or they're going to pay it back?
Well, that's
in general.
the thing. There's no penalty for that.
Exactly.
So it's a $10. It's a $10.
Yes.
That's why student debt. We've talked about student debt as well. Be careful with the type of debt that you're getting, because you may say to yourself, I saw somebody, I was sharing this with your mom, I saw somebody online yesterday complaining about, why did I get this student debt? You lied to me. You told me to go to college for 4 years to get a degree. Now I have all this debt and I don't have a job. That type of debt is very, very difficult to get rid of.
Yes.
I mean, basically, even if you go through bankruptcy, it still stays on. It's onerous and it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's not like buying a $10 taco and getting a loan on it. It's a little bit different than that.
No, it is. But for that company specifically, that was a horrible decision because now, again, you can't enforce the $10. But when you get 10 million people financing the burritos, it's $100 million of debt right there.
That's interesting. Interesting that people would even go down that route.
I know.
Right?
I don't understand that.
It's incredible.
I know. But even with student debt, I think for some reason, the past 50 to 100 years, the entire mentality was you graduate high school, you get your 4-year degree, you get a job. But the problem is that last step, get a job. You know, I go on Glassdoor or whatever that site is, and people are like, I've sent out hundreds, if not thousands, of applications with no response. And so the job market is thin right now. People are realizing that maybe going to college isn't the best idea right now. Because now you come out with all this debt and there's no jobs.
And there's no jobs. And the hard thing is that debt starts to reset. So you thought you had an $80,000 loan. All of a sudden, it
pay with interest.
Comes up to be over $100,000.
Oh, absolutely.
And you have to pay it. I love what you got right here. It says, we're really chasing. We're not chasing the paper. What does it represent? Like, what does it represent to certain people? What does it represent to you?
So I'm going to go a little bit farther and kind of relate this back. And so I think what happens is that we have this idea that, you know, money can bring us a level of happiness, which, you know, just study anyone who has money, and that's not really the case. Right? For example, I like the celebrity example. You have celebrities that come from nothing, and then they make all this money, and then they're all depressed, they're all on drugs, suicide, all that stuff. So it can't be the money. There has to be something fulfilling within your life that satisfies that part of your life. And so money can give you opportunities to do the things you want to do. Say, for example, you make X amount of money, you want to go back to school and help people in that regard. Great. I think our mindset and our values are good to a degree, but we're chasing the wrong things in that regard. And so I wrote down 5 things that we're actually chasing, which is freedom, security, time, power, and provision. So freedom, like the way that we want to live. Do we want to live in Florida, North Carolina, by family, away from family, the mountains, in the beach area? And then I think security is a big one because there's a lot of unexpected things that happen in life, just things that we can't control or things that we can control if we had money. For example, losing your job, right? Losing your job means 2 different things when you're working paycheck to paycheck and when you have a 6-month emergency fund. Those are 2 completely different situations. And that's where money really kicks in, right? And then I wrote down time as well, right? Time is important because, again, if we're doing these 60, 70, 80-hour a week programs, jobs, whatever it is, you know, what time do we have to ourselves and to be able to dedicate to others and our families and our friends as well, right? And then I wrote provision, which is an interesting one too, that kind of goes back into time and freedom, like have the opportunity to be able to provide for those who cannot provide for themselves. And so I love the aspect of family because the father works, the mother stays home. It's a more traditional mindset. The father works, mother stays home, but they're both providing in a way for their kids that requires money. And then with that money, then you have the time and the freedom to raise your kids in the environment that you desire to raise them in.
You know what I've learned through the journey that I've had with money and with raising a family? And now that I'm going out, I'm becoming a certified money coach. That's what we're going to be doing at Barbaro 360. We're going to be hosting workshops. If you want to get more information, go to barbaro360.com. You can download our Happy Money book, get more information on that. Money rarely is the problem. It's a symptom. There's something that's going on. Like you said, money provides security. Does it really provide security? Because I've seen...
I think within reason it does, but not to the level that people think it does. It's a little vague, but...
Yes. My point is that a person says, just ask a person, how much do you need to retire, to be comfortable? And I've asked that question to a ton of Jake and Gino students. I've asked that question to a lot of people. And you know what they say? About $10,000 a month. I need to live comfortably. Right? That's what they need. That's their passive income. That's their financial freedom number. But then when you ask them, like, how much money do you want? What's your lottery ticket? they'll say, I want 5 million or 10 million or 50 million.
Mm-hmm.
But you just told me 10 grand a month is great, but now you want 5 million or 10 million or 50 million.
Is that a lump sum or is that
Lump sum?
A lump sum.
But
Okay.
but it's interesting though, isn't it? Like you just told me you want 120 grand a year. That'll make you safe and secure. It's really not the money. What people really need to do is they need to dig a lot deeper and see what's going on. The fears they have around money, how they were raised with money, what they heard when they were younger, all of these insecurities that they have about it. Once again, it's typically not about the money. Money is just a symptom of what's going on in their current patterns in their current life.
Exactly. Going back to that celebrity example, you know, one of the reasons we obsess over money is, let's say, for example, you grew up, let's say you're a musician now, you came from a single mom, poor neighborhood. Now you have all this money and you're spending it. Okay, so what's the reason you're spending it? The reason is you had nothing growing up. And now you're going on this crazy spree because you never had any of this. And now you feel like you have to experience it all. And that's one of the main causes of your financial habits.
I agree. You wrote down here, money's a servant, not a master. And I love that. Money's there to serve you. It's not there to control you or take over your life. If all you're focused on is making the money, is that your true purpose? Are you going towards your true purpose? Now, if you focus on, let's say, I want to build this business. I want to help as many people as we can at Barbaro 360 to help their families, right? And in the meantime, we can make money doing that. Great. The more people we help, the more successful we are. The end result is the more money we're going to make. And I probably told you this, but one of the biggest mistakes that I made starting a business was I started a business to provide for my family, to make money for my family. You don't start a business to provide for your family. You start a business to provide for the market.
Yeah.
You see a problem in the market, you have a solution. That solution will create value for your customer. And in return, you make money or you earn a living from that solution. If you can flip the script and not focus on how much money am I going to make, but how many people can I serve and how much value can I create, the money's going to start come flying in. And it's really hard because, like I said, money's not an often talked about topic. Everyone thinks that we need to make money. No, we need to create value. Money is just a byproduct of value creation.
Yeah. And I think that's important too. Because kind of like you said, it makes sense logically when I say I want to make money to provide for my family. But then you kind of go back in time and you see all the people who have created businesses and was that what they went into, right? Or was it, but again, like the underlying thing is you do want to provide for your family, right? That's kind of what we're trying to say.
Yes.
But just having that in mind isn't enough to make the amount you need for your family a lot of times.
I love these notes that you put together because they really help me out. They keep me on track. I don't go down these rabbit holes. One of the last things that you wrote here is two things I really want to focus on before we end the show. Define your version of enough.
I love that.
I really believe that most people don't know how much is enough. Look at Bernie Madoff. How much was enough for him? Apparently 70 billion, 80 billion. It was never enough.
Yeah.
What's enough? I think everyone listening to this should say to themselves, well, how much money is enough? When is it enough? 1,000 apartments, 2,000 apartments, 5,000 apartments. I even sort of struggle with that as well. Define what is enough. And I love align money choices with what really matters to you.
Yeah. So kind of going on these 2 points, I feel like it's the wrong question. I'm going to pull a Jordan Peterson right here, but I think it's the wrong question. Because if we ask what's enough and we get there, we're going to feel like it's not enough. And so it never ends, right?
Yes. Well, you get to become a better version because as you get better, you learn how to make more money.
You do. I know.
And you make more money.
Yes.
Yes.
But it's not so much the making more money is the thing that's the problem, but it's the mentality of, okay, I'm here. How do I always get better? Right? I think the common person, every person really kind of struggles with being content where they are. Yes. And I think that's a skill that a lot of us can use. Also having the mindset of maybe I can do better in general.
Michael,
so there's kind of a conflicting thing right there, right?
It's interesting because when I was younger and I had little kids, enough was X number. As you guys get older, you all need cars.
Yes,
you guys eat like animals. We all go on vacation together. Yes. Enough is a little bit more.
Yes.
But I agree with you. And I think that's the problem, that people are focusing on money. They're not focusing on their sole purpose. They're not focusing on what, in the Money Coaching Institute, they call the magician. That archetype where all of a sudden they start manifesting their own reality. They're not focusing on the money, but they're focusing on why they're doing this. And I think that's so important. That's why I love Barbaro 360, because now our focus is not just on making money, but it's really on helping and transforming families, getting them connected. And the more families that we can help connect, the more families that we can really have that conversation around money, the more families that can actually have an understanding of what their relationship with money is, the more people we can serve, ultimately, the more money we can make. And our success is not dependent upon how much money we make. I think our success is how many people we can help through the company. And I think if every organization ran that way and every family ran that way, we wouldn't have these negative connotations about money. We'd really explore our relationship with money. And I think we'd get really clear on what our purpose is, what our vision is, what our values are. That's why I wanted to say align money choices with what really matters to you. It's what we call values-based decision making. Making decisions on how to spend money, how to invest money, align with your values. Don't let anyone tell you what your values are. You have to figure out what your values are. If your values are saving, not overspending, if your values are experiential, if your values are based on family, whatever that is, you need to understand that, and that you need to allocate your resources appropriately.
Yeah, I agree. Before we wrap up the show, tell me about your money coaching, because I know that you've been certified through many different programs in life coaching and financial coaching, but this specific one, what makes it different compared to what you've done in the past?
That's a great question. And I've done tons of coaching. I've been in mentorships with learning how to do multifamily. I've become certified as a life coach, and I love all of them. It's part of the journey. When I stumbled upon money coaching, I was always interested and I was always confused as to somebody who's in their 20s is super successful with money. They get into multifamily. They have no business on closing a deal, but they close a deal. They've got no experience. They've got no money.
But they just do it.
But they close a deal. And then I have somebody in their 40s who 7 figures liquid, great job,
and has no idea
looks
how
good
to
on
close a
paper.
deal.
And I hear them say, I can't close a deal. There's no deals.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, why was one successful and why was another one not successful? And I stumbled upon the Money Coaching Institute, and I'm like, money coaching, it comes down to, I think, a person's psychology, a person's relationship with money. And I'll hold the book up. Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy. I wrote this book because I started diving into people's relationships with money. Now, the core process in money coaching is looking at your money bio, looking at your past. And what I love about this entire process is it's not just life coaching where I'm going, okay, Mike, let's see where you are right now and let's go forward. Let's not really look in the past because I don't want to get stuck in the past. But how can you chart a path?
You can't go forward unless you look backwards.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was sort of hesitant to that because with therapy, which I think is a great, genre, it's a great thing to do. But what I've seen with a lot of therapists is they'll spend so much time in the past and they'll get stuck there and there's no progress. Well, with the Coaching Institute, with money coaching, you go into the past, you do your money bio, which by the way, can be painful. But not doing it is even more painful. So you go into the past, you work on your money bio, you get all of your memories of money. What did you hear? What did you see? What didn't you hear? How did you feel? And you create your entire bio. Then from there, coaching a person, you can see where the energies are. You can see where the emotions are. You can see where patterns are. And in my experience, my patterns were, we didn't have enough growing up. There was scarcity. I was taught to save, right? I was afraid of money. And those patterns came into my adulthood. Some of the patterns are great, some aren't great. But that's the thing. You go into the past, you see where you are today. And then from there, once you see that, wow, this is what I'm up against, how can I chart a future? You start looking at those patterns. Are they positive? Or are they negative? Do you want to continue to have those patterns, or you want to continue to break those patterns?
Exactly.
And it's really hard because you're really confronted with some things you're in your past and you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that, right? I can't believe I believe those things, but are they serving you well? And that's what I love about the entire process, going back, checking out what's going on, coming into the present, and then charting a plan for the future. If you're not aware, if you're not conscious of these decisions, it's tough. And the last thing I'll say is your brain has a lot to do with it. So going into your brain, the 3 parts of your brain, how you're making decisions, if you're not aware of that, and we've touched upon it a lot, if you're always in an emotional state, well, how are you going to be making great logical financial decisions? You're not going to.
And not only that, you're going to be drained emotionally. Like
yes.
if everything is based off of some emotion, I buy something just to buy something, or I buy something when I'm angry. It's like when you get back into that state of mind, the more you indulge in that, the worse it's going to get, right?
Yeah.
And so even let's go back with, buying something just to buy something. Well, on the other side of that too is, let's say I have I got a bonus at work, or I got a big check from this, that, and the other thing. When you actually go to buy something you want to buy, it's not going to hit the same way. you're gonna be like, it's just another stupid thing. I don't care about this.
Yes.
And so we kind of lose on that little bit of excitement of enjoying something new as well.
And for me, it was hard to spend money on myself
Mm-hmm.
because I was taught to save. I was taught to have scarcity. I was taught to have fear around money.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a tyrant personality with me when it comes to money because I'm just like, I just want to control. So understanding that, is that serving me fine? Is that serving my family? Exploring that relationship is so important.
I agree.
Can you end up with that passage from the Bible again?
Yeah, so it's this is Luke chapter 12, I believe. Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions.
Thanks, Mike.
Of course.
That was powerful. I love today's show. It
was great.
If you want to learn more, go to barbaro360.com. If you want to learn how to explore your relationship with money and how you can transform your family by talking about money and having a healthy, open relationship with money, just go to barbaro360.com. We want to thank you for spending part of your day with us. We know how valuable your time is, and for us, it's a privilege and an honor to have you listen to us. We'll see you on the next Happy Money podcast. Thanks, everyone.